So, I enter the city. It welcomes me with its most merciless and bitter grimace. What I see before my eyes is not what I expected. Doomsday made it here, too, even if no one in the refugee camp knows it yet. Damn it. The city looks as bruised and battered by the catastrophe as the rest of us. A few buildings are still standing, but most of them are propped up or about to fall down, with a handful of city dwellers in the street that look like automatons or sleepwalkers. But there's no doubt about it. I'm on the 5th Avenue of Doomsday City. What the hell is that old man trying to do with that enormous pair of bolt cutters? He can hardly get his hands around them.
Help me, please! Help me! Don't let them find me in the street after curfew. They'll take me to the refugee camp. Help me, please! But don't make any noise. There's a patrol just round the corner.
But what is it you need me to do?
It's almost curfew. I need a place to sleep. I need a place to hide, or they'll send me to the refugee camp. Don't you understand?
What is all this about a curfew?
At curfew, the soldiers want the streets cleared. And the way they see it, if you're out on the street after curfew, it means that you've got nowhere to go. You don't have a home. You don't belong here. And that makes you a rat. And so they take you to the refugee camp. I can't go to the camp. Understand? I can't go there.
You need a roof over your head, and you don't have anywhere to go.
I used to, but it doesn't exist anymore. I owned an apartment a few blocks from here. The block was badly damaged by the Great Wave, but it was still standing.
And what happened to your home?
This morning we had to evacuate the area in a hurry. We ran out in the streets with whatever we had on. Apparently, the foundation was starting to crumble. And a few hours later, all that was left of my home was a pile of smoking rubble, with 40 years of memories buried beneath it. But I can't let them take me to the camp. I need to get into another house before the curfew. Please, help me.
Okay, give me those bolt cutters. I'll see what I can do.
This house was empty, but the army has sealed it off. If I can just get this padlock off before curfew, I'll be safe. I need to get in here. But please, don't make too much noise. If the soldiers find us, they won't hesitate to kill us.
Impossible. I'm sorry. I can't do anything with this.
I need to get in there. I need to get in.
I'm looking for a place. Something like a pharmaceutical warehouse. Would you know anything about that?
I don't really know. There's a small medical center just outside the city limits. I suppose you mean that, right? They built it in a hurry, just knocked it together after the Great Wave. No one really knows what it's for, but there are vehicles going in and out of the place all the time. Whatever they're doing in there, they're keeping it very secret. Not even my daughter would tell me what goes on inside.
Did you say your daughter?
Yes, my daughter. My little Uma. She works there as a nurse. I'm afraid she left me. I suppose she got tired of living with a frail, sick old man like me. Because one day she simply left the house, and I haven't seen her since. It's been months now. I think she was right to leave me. These times are hard enough. You don't want to burn yourself with someone like me.
I'm sorry. I can't help you.
Help me, please.
Dozens of posters, all shredded, charred or half torn off. This wall must have been used for advertising before the Great Wave. One of them in particular catches my eye. It's a poster advertising an insurance company. The slogan is, "Tomorrow comes today." There's something familiar about this poster. I'd even swear that I actually remember it. For the first time since I woke up, I can say that I can remember something from my former life. Something hazy, related to this image. But what is it? A dirty window at ground level for ventilation. It's the only opening this building's basement has to the outside. It's the silhouette of the soldiers guarding the street from around the corner. It seems like those uniformed psychopaths' rifles are projected onto each and every corner of the city. It looks like this heating technology is not limited to the refugee camp. These bonfires are used here too, and their emissions are just as toxic here as they are there. What the hell could they be burning in them? 3 people warming themselves by the fire. They stare into the flames, as if their thoughts were also burning in that rusty old drum.
Hello, friend. You look lost. Come over by the fire.
It's dying down, but maybe it'll last until curfew.
As long as those uniformed psychopaths don't decide to end our little get-together first, of course.
Hey, look! One of those magic bracelets from the camp. They say that place is a real hellhole. A kind of living death. So you've come back from the dead. Do they call you Lazarus?
Well, you could put it that way. You were saying something about a curfew. What time does it start exactly?
Well, it depends on the mood of the soldiers in this zone. But you know it's time to go home when they start taking their guns out of their holsters.
Today they're extremely jumpy. I don't think it'll be long before they start insulting people and hitting them with their rifle butts.
You guys are awfully hard on them. It's just their crude way of showing us affection.
Oh, shut up! In any case, you don't have to worry. That bracelet means you don't have to hide from them. You know, that's one of the privileges that comes with it.
And you? Do you people have to hide?
We try to stay out of their way. The first rule is, be home before curfew. Anyone who isn't gets dragged off to refugee camp. That's one of the strictest laws the Great Wave imposed upon this city.
And do you know how things are elsewhere? Do you get news from outside?
I'm afraid not. Afraid with no communications or transportation, and with the army on every corner, we are totally cut off.
Who cares anyway? When you don't know from one day to the next if you're gonna be alive, there's no time to worry about what happens 100, 1,000, or 100,000 miles away.
I understand. Why are the soldiers? I'd heard that things function better here.
I don't know where you heard that, friend, but whoever told you that was lying. Here, things are very ugly and getting uglier every day. Everything's in short supply: water, food, medicine.
We have a surplus of just 2 things: misery and violence. Life is cheap here, and getting cheaper all the time, especially since the army took over.
The army. I see. And what happened to the other authorities? The politicians? The laws?
Those are distant memories from the old world, my dear. Get them out of your head, because all that collapsed like a house of cards. Since the Great Wave, no one's got any plan, strategy. We're all adrift.
He's right. The most reliable thing we have left is what you see around the corner. Armed teenagers in uniform on the streets, on the rooftops, just as scared as we are, or more, and shooting anything that moves.
I think our common destiny is to finally die of starvation, of disease, or boredom. I don't know which of the 3 options I find the most cruel. Who knows? Maybe the most sensible thing is to organize a group excursion and break into Suicide Park.
Suicide Park? Don't call it that. It's not funny. That name's as stupid as that hospital they built in such a hurry next to it. It's crazy. The entire city is starving and sick, and the soldiers keep those medical facilities locked up like Fort Knox.
But what good is it having medical facilities if no one can use them? I don't understand.
No one does, friend, but that's the way it is. I don't know why anyone would want to go into that building. But I can assure you that they're not going to get treated for anything in there, not even for a miserable cold.
Besides, it's a real fortress. The person would be more likely to come out sick from an overdose of gunpowder and lead. You know how it is, dear. There's no cure for love or death. Hey, I like that phrase. It would make a good opening line for a story.
Oh, will you shut up for once, Ramon? Don't pay any attention to him. In the old world, he earned his living writing stories, and he still thinks that all that waste paper might someday be useful after the Great Wave.
And in fact, it is. A good deal of that scrap paper is fueling this bonfire right now, dear. So I can consider my literary career to have been worthwhile.
Did you say Suicide Park? Someone in the camp told us.
And the first dark stars come out to hang from the sky. We could sit and count them together, you and I.
When the sun departs from Suicide Park. Yes, I recognize it. But what the hell is it? Is there really a place with that name?
Yes, it exists. After the Great Wave, and when things were starting to get really ugly here, the weakest among us eased their suffering with a bullet, by overdosing, or by jumping from high places. You know how it is. All those dark stars had a hard time finding a reason to go on living.
There was a terrible wave of suicides, and there still is.
The problem is that at some point a problem arose. How should I put it? A serious logistical problem. Access to drugs and firearms became practically impossible. So the easiest thing was to grab a rope or a belt and go to Suicide Park after dark.
There was a time when it was hard to find a free branch anywhere in the park.
The suicides in the area multiplied at such a rate that the army closed down the park. They said for public health reasons.
For months, the only thing blooming in that park were the corpses of the hanged. The place became more like a theme park. Lots of fun for everyone.
I told you not to make jokes about that. Don't you have any respect for anything?
Of course not. That was one of the many things I lost in the Great Wave. And one of the things I missed the least, believe me.
Thanks for the chat.
Thanks for the company, friend.
Judging from what remains of the stained glass windows and the murals, this pile of rubble must have been a place of worship before they struck. Now it's one of the most badly damaged buildings in the area. There are hardly any walls still standing.
Send us a sign, Lord. We need a sign from you.
Hey, wait a minute. I know that voice.
Are we guilty of arousing your rage? Did we do it? Speak with your tongue of fire, Lord. Purge us with unrelenting justice. Send us a sign. Is this our doing? Are you punishing us for our arrogance? Unleash your thunderous voice, Lord. Release us from this intolerable uncertainty. Did we do it? Send us a sign.
I'm getting a strong impression that man's a fanatic and a little bit deranged. But his sermon made me curious. What could he mean by, we did it?
The thunderous voice of your angels through the gash. That is your sign.
Oh no. Here comes that sensation again. It's like floating in a dense liquid, while everything around me is transformed. Good God, I think I'm starting to lose my mind.
The flames. We still have time.
The only statue in this place still standing. It's Saint... what's his name? Patron saint of... who knows what. I'm afraid that if I ever was a believer, all that information has also been blanked.
Do it? Are we the guilty ones?
The catastrophe caused a lot of damage to the statue's pedestal. The fact that the statue is still standing is a miracle.
The thunderous voice of your angels.
Considering the condition of the rest of the church, it's amazing that the stained glass window is still in place and practically intact. Such little light that gets in from the street gives it a ghostly appearance. This enormous stone cross casts a giant shadow across the aisle of the church. Perhaps that wasn't the original intention, but the result is pretty gloomy and menacing. Seated on these disarranged pews, some people are listening to the preacher. Others just nod off. I guess they don't have anywhere else to go.
The ruins of the temple, the lion above
A handful
the
of tiny
flames.
shards of
We
brightly
still
colored
have
glass,
eyes.
the remains of the stained glass window on this side of the church, destroyed by the Great Wave.
Illuminate us with your fiery voice, Lord. Send us a
few
sign.
parishioners listen to the words of the preacher, mesmerized. Although I'm sure that, like me, they can't decipher the meaning of his mystical rants either. That must be Reverend Blake, the preacher I heard about in the camp. I don't understand a word of that man's sermon.
That is your
And I'm afraid
sign.
the other faithful don't either. Could that be the reason why everyone reveres him so much? I'm not going to interrupt him in the middle of his sermon. That would be rude.
Illuminate us with your...
A metal sign bolted to the wall. It's the logo of the local subway system. And what I can see, one of the edges is slightly detached. What was formerly the entrance to a subway stop is now a bunker reinforced with cement. A moldy sign says, "Subway service suspended until further notice." I imagine the train tunnels were flooded or ruined after the Great Wave. Let's see. I can try to rip it off. Nothing. I'm afraid I'm going to be able to get it off with my hands. It's rather disconcerting to see such a small building surrounded by such extreme security measures. Could this be the medical center people have been telling me about? It's one of the ways into the city's sewer system. The Great Wave wrecked this place. Did the same thing happen down there? So, let's see. Impossible. It's not that it's super heavy. It's that there's hardly any place to insert your fingers to lift this manhole cover. Closed for public health reasons is written on this piece of wood nailed to the stump. Wait a minute. Health with no A? Judging from its girth, this giant must have lived for hundreds of years before someone got the bright idea of cutting it down. Now the stump is guarding the entrance to the park. A bucolic fountain covered with ivy and moss. The park's desolation gives it an air of mystery from this side of the fence. In its day, it must have been home to a school of goldfish, which I suppose are now gradually decomposing inside it. Southside Park. Would you believe it? This must be the famous suicide park I've been hearing so much about. Huh. The pun is as witty as it is macabre. The park is closed down, and the front gate is locked shut. If I want to get in there, it won't be through the gate. These are the remains of the fish that used to swim around in the fountain. It looks like the catastrophe caught them by surprise, too. Ugh, the smell they give off is nauseating. You can smell these dead creatures from several yards away. I have no intention of picking up those rotten fish with my hands, to say nothing of putting them in my pocket. Strange. The soil here seems darker and less packed than the soil around it. In fact, the mud in this part of the ground is a bit damp and mushy. My fingers even leave marks in it when I touch it.
Did we do it? Are we the guilty ones?
Let's see. If I wedge one of the ends of the plank under the statue's pedestal, the other part will rest directly on the base of the toppled column.
We still have time. We're waiting, Lord. Did we do it? Illuminate us. Send us a sign with your just and vengeful arm. Is this our fault? Listen! It's the fiery breath of God. The Lord has sent us his sign. And I was right. It is all our fault. We did it, and we have aroused his fury.
But what the hell's going on here?
Look, that's the sign. Forgive us, Lord. Forgive us. Repent, all ye sinners.
It's the atmospheric phenomenon I've been hearing so much about. That infernal sound coming from the crack in the sky. It's terrifying.
That is the sign. We did it. Forgive us, Lord. Forgive us. My children, God has spoken to us with his darkest voice. Haven't you heard him? But there's still time. All is not lost. We still have time. Salvation lies in the place where it all began, in the ruins, at the source. We must return to the ruins of the temple. We must return. We must.
Among all the fragments of the stained glass window scattered on the floor, there's one big piece of glass. Well, look at that. Next to this enormous hunk of glass, the colored glass shards I picked up earlier look ridiculous. I'd better get rid of them. Reverend Blake is totally overwhelmed. It looks like the crack in the sky is having a profound effect on him. The man's message intrigues me. We did it. We did it. Hello. I heard your sermon and...
Yeah, God has shown us his sign. He has finally spoken to all of us. With his thunderous voice, he has revealed the unknown. We did it. It's all our fault. We did it. But there's still time. All is not lost. There's still time to avoid it. The head of the lion above the flames that holds the key to everything.
But what is it we did?
Time is the will of God. It is his heart and his hammer. The centuries and the ages belong solely to him. The celestial empire is a divine clock. Time rotates around God. Its hands are his angels and archangels. Now I see it all clearly. How could we have been so stupid? Our arrogance had enraged him. That's what we did.
This man is definitely crazy. Nothing he says makes any sense.
I beg you, leave my brother in peace. He's very upset.
We did what? I'm sorry, but I didn't understand a word you just said.
We sullied his name. We didn't know that each second is a drop of Christ's blood, and that only he can reign over the interval, over the infinite mysticism of the fragment. Only he can reign over time with his incandescent omnipotence, and we were unable to see it. And now he is enraged, and we're to blame. That's what we did.
I still don't understand what it is we did.
Each cycle is a fluorescent gust of God's will, don't you see? Can't you see it? He reigns over the days and the hours from the inscrutable luminescence of his dwelling place. And we are just instants that slip through his fingers. Time is his, and his alone. And we tried to wrest it from him. That's what we did.
What signs are you referring to?
The dark angels of God clamor madly through the open wound that is bleeding the kingdom of heaven dry. Haven't you heard? They were speaking with a thunderous voice. God is furious. That is his sign.
I suppose in his delirium, the man has mistaken that strange sound coming from the gash in the sky left by the great wave as a sign from the heavens. He's definitely lost his mind.
Please be so kind as to leave us in peace. Can't you see that my brother is very agitated?
I assume you're referring to the atmospheric phenomenon in the sky caused by the great wave.
No, no! It's the stench of human arrogance that made the gears of the gates of hell grind. And now they're opening up like a festering wound to swallow us all. Can it be that you haven't heard it? That is his sign.
Excuse me, but I don't think that was a divine sign.
We've lacerated the sacred skin of the shroud God enveloped us in. We've betrayed him. We've stabbed him with our infinite arrogance. And you can see the mark etched on the heavens. Through that gash, Lucifer has shouted our name from on high. Satan is calling each and every one of us by name. Can't you hear it? That is his sign.
Tell me, what is it that we can still prevent?
The wrath of God, the destruction of man. There's still time. We did it, but we still have time. The key is in the ruins of the temple. We have to find the ruins of the temple. Look for the head of the lion above the flames. Bring me the head of the lion above the flames while there's still time.
But this church is already in ruins. It hardly has any walls or a foundation left. You're already in the ruins of the temple.
No, you're mistaken. Bring me the head of the lion above the flames.
That's enough. Stop tormenting my brother. He's exhausted.
The head of the lion above the flames? That sounds absurd. It makes no sense. I think it's best that I leave you in peace.
Yes, leave my brother in peace.
There's still time. There's still time. Bring me the head of the lion above the flames.
Can I ask you a few questions?
Sure, but make it snappy. Can't you see that we're very busy?
What goes on inside that church? Has everyone gone completely crazy?
Are you referring to the pastor and his flock? Oh, don't pay too much attention to them. Reverend Blake is a good man. He helped a lot of people after the Great Wave. But he gradually started to lose his mind until he reached the state he's in now.
Well, I stop by once or twice to listen to him preach. The days are long. You have to find something to do. I try to go at this time of day. There are fewer people because it's almost curfew time. The Reverend seems obsessed with that atmospheric phenomenon in the sky, and with religious themes of guilt and repentance. Although I think he's actually just talking about himself. But the most surprising thing about all this is that he has hundreds of followers, and he's attracting more and more all the time from all over the city. And they even let him into the refugee camp once in a while to preach there. People adore him.
Why does that surprise you? We've been following sane leaders since time began, and look where that got us. Maybe it's time to start following the crazier ones.
Well, that's the most sensible thing I've heard you say all day.
Atmospheric phenomenon? Are you referring to the gash in the sky? In the camp, no one knows what it is.
On this side of the fence, the authorities have come up with their own scientific term: atypical controlled turbulence in the upper ionosphere. Though I suppose that's just a fancy way of telling us that they have no idea what the hell it was that split the sky in two after the Great Wave.
It makes my blood run cold when that aberration starts to grind out that noise like a piece of rusty machinery.
I wish those scrambled little clouds up there were the worst of our problems, dear.
Oh, shut up.
Thanks for the chat.
Thanks for the company, friend.
I'll do this very carefully, so that the glass doesn't break in two. Perfect. The hole I've dug is big enough to get to the other side of the fence. Okay, here we go. Under the gate into Suicide Park. Good God. There are dozens, hundreds of corpses hanging from the branches. What could have drawn all these people here? What kind of pain? What kind of desperation brought them here? These are the corpses of ordinary people who were living their ordinary lives in their ordinary little worlds up to a very short time ago. Could any of them have imagined meeting an end like this back then? Forgotten and nameless, swaying in the breeze like marionettes. And all those savages in uniforms did was close the park. They didn't even bother to cut their bodies down from the trees. I'm afraid that tonight, there are too many dark stars to count in Suicide Park. Although the crows have already done a thorough job on him, from what's left, I'd say that the corpse belongs to a young man, barely of legal age, one of the many dark stars in the park. That strikes me as disrespectful, and I don't think it would do anything for me. An iron crowbar buried like a stake. Right now, the other end is around the neck of a corpse. Even on the ground, the noose squeezes that poor devil's neck like a boa constrictor. One of the many dark stars in the park. Although the crows have already done a thorough job on him, from what's left, I'd say that the corpse belongs to a young man, barely of legal age. This vegetation is so dense that all you can see are some flattened metal posts in there. There's no doubt that nature has taken over this corner of the city. So much so that I'm afraid that this is the end of my little stroll. The trees and bushes are so close together here that I can hardly push the branches to one side with my hands. The thorns in these bushes are jabbing into me like metal spikes. I'm not going to be able to open up a path this way. Wherever I look, I see corpses hanging from these branches, some so recent that the shadows of their faces make it seem like they're following you with their gaze. The crowbar fits perfectly into the hole in the manhole cover. It's one of the ways into the city's sewer system. The Great Wave wrecked this place. Did the same thing happen down there? Wait a minute. I'm not going to climb down any further. It's totally dark in there, and it would be crazy to go into these sewers without any light. Maybe with the help of the crowbar, I can get the subway sign off the wall. Damn it! I managed to tear it down, but the subway sign is broken in two. That would be one way of getting into the house. But the noise of breaking glass would alert the soldiers posted nearby. I'd rather not think about what those savages would do to this old man. And me.